Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Paint Branch, Unitarian Universalist Church. We are all muted now. Our prelude music is On the Road to Find Out by Cat Stevens, performed by David Chapman, our music director and pianist. Thank you, David. Good morning to all, and a special hello to any visitors with us this morning. I am Ebony Contreras, your worship associate. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and I'm part of a team that works with service leaders and staff to craft and produce our worship services. We are officially a welcoming UU congregation. This means we have committed as a community to radical inclusion, to creating a space that honors every part of our identities, backgrounds, and experiences, particularly as it relates to LGBTQ people. We are a faith community that has also adopted the eighth principle to our list of principles in which we affirm and promote, and that we hold strong values and as moral guides. We proclaim that we will work to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community. Our 8 principles express our values. They are ideals to drive action. We are Paint Branch. We are from all over. We have a range of shapes and sizes, appearances, and identities. We have differing physical abilities. We have different theologies and philosophies. We've been waiting for you to join us here. And speaking of here, we acknowledge that the land where our church building stands is the ancestral home of the Piscataway people, who settled this region thousands of years ago, extending from the Potomac River toward the Chesapeake Bay. So whatever brought you online this morning, we are glad you are here. And please note that we are recording on Facebook Live and Zoom. And Paint Branch also has a YouTube channel that we encourage you to check out. We invite you to participate from your home in singing, sharing, and chalice sliding, and as well as sharing joys and sorrows in the chat. All questions are welcome in the chat. You're also welcome to join us after service for virtual coffee hour and break rooms. Finally, to get to know us better, please send your contact information to engagement@pbuuc.org. And now for an announcement. We have one announcement. I'd like to share with you about water communion. So water communion is one of the most cherished rituals in Unitarian Universalism. In this ritual, all are invited to share water from the places of your life that carry meaning. This might be a special place that you love, where you find healing, or that invokes wonderful memories. It might also be a place where the hard things have happened, where you have been changed in some way. As we begin a new church year, Paint Branch is celebrating Water Communion, and we hope that everyone will take part. So please read the continuum for directions on how to participate on August 29th, masked, but in person, or virtually by taking a photo of yourself. Please reach out to Chris McCain for details. Before we enter into formal worship this morning, may we just hold all that is going on in Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced. Many are afraid and unsafe. May we hold them in our hearts.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Leo Jones, and I've been a member at Paint Branch since 2000. I'm delighted to be with you. So let's imagine that wonderful day when we will be together again in person. Take a deep breath and relax. Think of a bright, sunny day. There is a slight breeze in the air, but it isn't too hot or too cold. The weather forecast calls for picnics and hikes with a sprinkling of backyard barbecues. Sustained by a good night's sleep, everyone awakens well-rested, feeling peaceful and anticipating our reunion. The coffee is especially good this morning, the perfect ratio of coffee to sweetener to creamer. The tea has just the right tang of lemon. The strawberries are ripe, and the toast, or bagel if you prefer, is warm and inviting. For those of us using public transportation, your ride arrives exactly on time and empty, as if it were a private limousine. For those of us who drive, the roads are almost empty, the traffic is light, and our travel time is cut in half. Parents of young families will awaken to find that their children have dressed, made their beds, and straightened their rooms. You can hear them downstairs engrossed in quiet conversation as they make their own breakfast. And, much to your delight, when you reach the kitchen, you find your breakfast on the table beside a neatly folded napkin. Everyone is ready to leave on time. You close the door behind you as the children load themselves into the car, arranging themselves in alphabetical order. The ride to church is quiet except for the soothing sound of the classical music tastefully selected by your eldest child. Brahms is a family favorite. As each of us near the church, a feeling of anticipation arises. Those making left turns into the church property are delighted to find that there's no oncoming traffic. As we enter the driveway, we feel and hear the crunch of the gravel. And we think, not for the first time, when I hit the lottery, this parking lot will be paved. It's clear that the service will be well attended. There are many cars in the lot, but there are exactly enough parking spaces to accommodate everyone. As you approach the deck, you are greeted warmly by a member of the Board of Trustees, perhaps Janet Overton or Melissa Graham. The children scamper off to their religious exploration classes, eager to learn what activities Chris McCann and the teachers have in store for them. You enter the meeting house and are welcomed by friends and members you haven't seen in person for over a year. Ushers distribute weekly bulletins. As you walk to your seat, you pause to say hello. Outside are beautiful windows. The trees are full of improbably green leaves. They sway in the gentle breeze. Suddenly, a bird appears, a hawk, a falcon. It swoops from left to right effortlessly as an invocation. The choir assembles ready to burst into song, hoping to meet David Chapman's very high standards and looking forward to Ebeth Porter's solo. Reverend Ann takes her place behind the pulpit, excited to greet many members of the congregation in person for the first time. Beside her is this week's worship associate, Ebony Contreras, who is mentally checking her list of all the moving parts of the day's service. No one is late. Finally, David takes his seat at the piano and begins the opening notes of the perfect prelude. The service has begun. Now, let us worship together. Let's take a moment to unmute and greet each other.
Morning.
Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hi. May it be so.
Greetings.
Good morning.
Betty.
Hi.
Here's the pianist. Oh,
Thank
there's Caitlin's neighbor.
Thank you, friends. You will be muted once again. And now, Marge Owens will light our chalice.
Good.
How do I do it? Here we go.
Who's D?
There we go.
D, I don't recognize her.
Oh. Oops.
Hello, hello. Oh, we light the chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. So you join me with the Spanish version. Encendamos este cáliz para celebrar el unitarianismo, universalismo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigas, del amor, del corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Good morning, my good people. I'm Chris McCann, your religious educator, and my pronouns are she and her. It is grand to be together today. And Leo, I have little tears in my eyes from that beautiful meditation. This morning, I was visited by a hummingbird, green and gossamer. It flitted and darted outside my window for the briefest of moments, and I was delighted at this visitation. Once it flew away, I looked up the symbolic meaning of hummingbirds, and lo, the website I used declared that hummingbirds show up to remind us to slow down, to remember the good things of life. Serendipity on this fine morning as we consider what does make a good life. I am of the opinion that being open to serendipity is part of a good life. Had I had my nose down in my phone, which embarrassingly is usually the case, I would have missed this treat. I would have missed the serendipity. I would have still been at a loss for how to begin my story this morning. For me, another primary aspect of a good life, which will likely not shock any of you, is spending time with kids. They remind us to play, to ask questions, to laugh uproariously, and sometimes they remind us that allowing our emotions to rule is the best way to get through a tough time. In preparation for this service, I asked the parents of Paint Branch to ask their kids what makes a good life. And here are some of their answers. Having several supportive communities of people that you also contribute to. Having people like, admire, and or respect you. Having a passionate pursuit, even if not your day job. To love friends and family and to remember good times and make the best memories before you're gone and to be kind to others. to be happy and to make your friends and family happy and feel loved. And this gorgeous nugget of wisdom, and I quote, "Having peace, now go, I am not at peace," end quote. What I love about this is not necessarily just the answer, but honestly, the deep self-knowledge, which is central to knowing what makes a good life for oneself. And so I ask, what from your deep self-knowledge for you makes a good life? And now David will play hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
Paint Branch. A good life is where I can live out my values of freedom, independence, creativity, spirituality, wealth, and family. It's hard for me to say wealth because I don't want to appear money hungry, but I am money hungry. If I had all the money in the world, oh, what I could do with it. It certainly would not involve space tourism. Why are you all up there when we have so many things right here that need our attention? There are many people out there doing great, meaningful things with their extra money. And then there are other people going to space for vacation. For me, what makes a good life is getting out of the rat race. I want to spend my time doing exactly what I want to do. There were times when I felt like I was doing 80% of the things and work I had to do, and only 20% of the things and work I want to do. When I say I want to get out of the rat race, I mean I want to turn this number upside down. I want to make more time for my authentic interests and ambitions to become more fully myself. As someone who's still trying to figure it all out, I find myself looking for advice and wisdom, but instead of buying products and things that claim that will make me happy, money back guarantees, you know what I mean, or following the expectations of others, so to speak, I just sought to be alone, to see if I can figure it out for myself or shut out the distractions so I can at least think in peace. So I shut it out, I got out of the house, turned off what I could think to turn off and just went outside. After multiple experiences like this, just going outside, I found that nature has just as much to say as my electronic devices, the television, and society at large. The trees, the grass, the flies, and even the little birds and deer have things to say or show. They communicate if we listen. Their everything is just so different. Sometimes I understand what they were communicating, and other times I did not. But when I did understand them, I was just in awe. So lately, I've been learning more about how to nurture my relationship with the other living beings around me and to just think outside of this whole realm, really. There's a shamanic practitioner named Sandra Ingerman. She's very prolific, lots of books and classes too. And so I'm reading one of her books called Walking in the Light, The Everyday Empowerment of a Shamanic Life. And I'm learning about how to cooperate with change rather than resisting or fighting changes that occur in my life, how to be peaceful, balanced, joyful, grateful, so the world will reflect this back to me. That inner work needs to be done before I can fully express myself in the world. I'm shifting from ambitiously driven rat race life to a spiritually driven life. And all change is scary, and this is no exception. And getting out of the rat race is risky on so many levels. But Sandra Ingerman reminds us that, and I quote, "You cannot operate out of fear and live from a place of spirit at the same time." She says that life will get easier for us depending on if we choose to follow the stream of ego or choose spirit. So what makes a good life? There are so many answers, and I'm still trying to find mine. Maybe I'm not supposed to make a good life. Maybe I'm supposed to just be a good person, be good to myself, be good to others, honor my sacred no's, embrace my sacred yeses. If I can just be and do, maybe I won't have to make a good life. A good life will just create itself around me, around goodness and love, around self-acceptance, around letting go and getting out so I can truly just be myself. And now we will hear from one of our pastoral care associates, Jim Flaherty.
Good morning. We set aside time now for the sharing of joys and sorrows in the congregation. As Ebony said, I am a member of the Pastoral Care Associates team, along with Kathy Bartolomeo and Lynn Lewison. Our contact information is posted in the chat, along with that of our minister, Reverend Ann Kadlacek. Let us join our hearts and minds in a spirit of care and compassion. I invite you to consider how each of us as individuals might enhance our living a good life through the building and nurturing of strong relationships within our church community. May our sharing today help strengthen our connections with one another and also ease the burdens that some might be carrying at this time. I invite you now to share your joys and sorrows in the chat during the playing of the intonation. For our intonation music, David Chapman will play The Merry-Go-Round of Life by Joe Hisaishi. Thank you, David. Let's now pause for 30 seconds of silence to reflect on all that others have shared, as well as those joys and sorrows which were not expressed at this time. May we hold one another in love and kindness, so that this congregation may be a source of strength and comfort, courage and hope in the days and weeks ahead.
Hello again, friends. Before I begin the sermon, I have a confession to make. While I promise you that I will be fully present with you this morning, I must admit that I am thinking of Wednesday. Today's sermon was prompted by an article I read in the Washington Post in March, before I was offered the opportunity to lead this worship service. The author of the article, Steve Petro, begins by recalling the death of his parents. He and his siblings struggled to find suitable inscriptions for his mother and father's grave markers. After much deliberation, they settled on an inscription for their mother that read, "Beloved by all." For their father, they decided on journalist and professor. It seems that as she was dying, her mother asked her children how they would remember her. She became more focused on what the writer calls eulogy virtues, how she would be remembered at her memorial service. After her death, they recognized that their mother would love nothing more to be known as a wife, mother, and grandmother, instead of her many professional accomplishments. On the other hand, her father's life was defined by his many accomplishments, his tremendous talent, and his notoriety. The writer called these resume virtues. The article led me to think about my own life. The question for me became, am I living or have I lived a life of eulogy virtues or one of resume virtues? Am I living a good life, and what is it? In my experience, such topics are not often addressed in Unitarian Universalist spaces, at least not directly. I think there may be several reasons. First, ours is a big tent. We bring to church many beliefs, ideologies, and practices, and our religions of origin have given us a diversity of experiences. What resonates for some might not to others. We are, after all, a faith without a creed. A second reason may be that Unitarian Universalists don't want to be told how to think or feel. We can be a cantankerous bunch who prize and guard our individualism. The question of a good life may be considered too personal, too intrusive. Considering such questions could seem impolite, even presumptuous. But I think that one of the purposes of religion is to transform us by prompting us to think and feel about matters of importance. What could be more important than thinking deeply about how we lead our lives? As I thought about this theme, I considered consulting the words of thinkers whose names all of us know. They had much to say about leading a good life, but I think these conversations are more meaningful when we have them with people we know and trust. Just for fun, I looked at the many self-help books that are available. I wondered if these books are what they promise to be, why do so many people still need help? One of them stood out to me. It was titled, How to Be Happy Every Day. Really? Every day? The book begs a serious question. What is the meaning of happiness and how do I have it every day? My own view is that the word happiness often is confused with pleasure. When the writers of the Declaration of Independence referred to the pursuit of happiness, I doubt they were thinking about pleasure, which can be fleeting. So the concept of being happy every day would have been foreign to them. I suggest the more substantial and more attainable term is contentment. Contentment isn't fleeting. It is serious, but embraces joy in simple things, satisfaction, and gratitude. I imagine that when one reflects on a day or a lifetime and finds goodness there, one is content. I don't mean to suggest that we ban all mentions of happiness. Wishing someone a contented birthday probably won't be received very well. I would hope they were having a day filled with happiness. I just don't believe making it a lifetime pursuit leads to a fulfilling life. Contentment can withstand the ups and downs that all of us experience in life. Notice that the service is not titled How to Live a Good Life. I don't presume to provide advice. I plan to share with you what I have learned from some of the wisest, most thoughtful people I know who have lived lives of eulogy virtues. You will recognize their names. Carol Carter Walker is a rare breed, a native Washingtonian. In fact, she is a third generation Washingtonian. She grew up in a district neighborhood known as Kingman Park near RFK stadiums. She notes that it was only when the land was discovered to have been on the top of a swamp that Black people were permitted to buy there. Her mother was born in DC. A science teacher, she was responsible for preparing students for desegregation. Carol's father came to Washington as part of the Great Migration. He had worked as a sharecropper in Georgia and left the South to do better economically. The guiding principle of her upbringing was the need to improve her family's economic circumstances. Carol says that her father rarely talked about his life in Georgia, but she remembers that once as she was riding with an uncle, the song Georgia on My Mind played on the radio. Her uncle responded, Georgia ain't on my mind. Out of concern for desegregation and that it might become violent, Carol was sent to a boarding school in Lenox, Massachusetts. The school was run by German Jews who had escaped Nazism. She told me, everything I am and everything I'm not is due to leaving home at 13 and never coming back. In college at Antioch, a progressive school in Ohio, Carol explored several religions, including Quakerism, Scientology, and Judaism. She liked the sense of community that religious affiliation offered. To pursue her passion, Carol left college and moved to New York, married, and gave birth to her daughter. One day, Carol was injured and went to an emergency room. When the registrar asked about her religion, Carol replied, none. The woman was horrified. So Carol vowed that the next time she went to a hospital, she would have a religion to put on the form. She had heard of Unitarianism. Carol accepted an invitation to go to All Souls Church Unitarian in Washington, D.C. Following the invitation to fellowship, Carol went to the hall for coffee. No one spoke to her. She vowed never to return. She learned of a Black Unitarian congregation that would become the Sojourner Truth Unitarian congregation in Washington, D.C. She was drawn there in part because it had a female minister, but also because it met her criteria. The services began at 11, and she lived close enough to rise at 10 and get there on time. After the congregation disbanded, Carol took a year off from church. After meeting members of Paint Branch, Carol decided to visit. Our then co-minister, Barbara Wells Tenhove, sang the song, Getting to Know You. Reverend Tenhove missed a key and started over. Carol was impressed by her humility. She joined the church and became very active almost immediately. She felt most connected to the Diversity and Anti-Racism Transformation Team, or DART, where she continues to play an important role. She respects the church's commitment to social justice, as demonstrated most recently by the adoption of the 8th principle. For Carol, a good life now includes agency, the ability to use her time as she sees fit. She cannot abide selfishness, and she is disappointed that America is not the country she thought it was. But she is energized by her belief that to give in to the unpleasantness is to let them win. Carol has come to believe that transactional relationships may be useful in one's personal life, professional life, but personal relationships bring joy. She is especially happy about her relationships with her grandchildren, who have reached the age that Carol's relationships with them are independent of their relationships to her daughter. Don Gerson is a longtime member of Paint Branch. Don has lived a remarkable life, one he describes as long, adventurous, and satisfying. He wouldn't trade it for anything, not that everything has gone smoothly. His earliest memories are of his grandparents' apartment in Manhattan at Broadway and 86th Street. Much of his childhood was shaped by his bouts of rheumatic fever at ages 9 and 12. Each time he was bedridden for 3 months. He says of his illness, you have to live with it. His doctor told Don that he would have to live a sedentary life. He didn't. Ignoring his doctor's advice, Don became active in the police athletic league. As the time for high school neared, a teacher told Don that he wasn't material for the Bronx High School of Science, a prestigious New York public school. Nevertheless, he excelled on the Regents exams and was admitted. He decided then that he would always define for himself what success is. Don described his time at Bronx Science as a wondrous thing. It was very competitive. He earned poor marks in any subject that required memorization, but he excelled in science courses. His favorite was biology. Also, he joined the swim team. At his next physical exam, Don's doctor noted that his heart was operating much more efficiently than he expected. Don told the doctor about his activities with the police athletic league and his place on the swim team. The doctor was amazed and said, I'm not going to tell you to stop. Don considers this moment a pivotal one in his life. He went to NYU to prepare for a career in medical research, but his plans to attend medical school were quashed by a biology professor who demanded that his students memorize the names and careers of famous biologists. Memory, of course, wasn't Don's strong suit. So he looked for another major and settled on meteorology. After college, Don took a job where he was told that he would have to spend time in the Arctic. He recalled seeing a globe on which the Arctic was marked unexplored. He was eager to go. For the next 20 years, for about 5 months at a time, Don studied ice conditions at the Arctic Circle. During his downtime, he explored on his own, taking photographs. Don said he made use of everything that was available to him. He represented the United States at conferences and symposia around the world that were attempting to standardize reporting on sea ice. Don has lost two great loves of his life. His first wife, Barbara, died suddenly after 37 years of marriage. His second wife, our beloved Emma Sue Gaines Gerson, died in 2020 after 20 years of marriage. Don continues to grieve. He tells me, I've been living alone, very little personal contact, no woman in my life. But in spite of his losses, Don told me, I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world. When he and his first wife, Barbara, decided to marry, they agreed that they wanted a ceremony that included a rabbi and a Methodist minister. Don called every synagogue in the Washington area and was told that in order to be married by a rabbi, his fiancée had to convert to Judaism. Someone suggested that they go to a Unitarian church. They were married at All Souls Church in 1960. When the couple decided that Unitarianism reflected their values, they decided to search for a UU church. Their search led them to Paint Branch. He joined in 1965. And yes, I am still thinking of Wednesday. Margaret Morrison was born 85 years ago in Memphis, Tennessee. As you might imagine, the South of the mid to late 40s was not hospitable for African Americans. Margaret's parents were not churchgoers, but they sent her their children, to Sunday school and church each week. She believed that Christianity was the literal truth. She thought that Christians were those who attended church. At 8 years old, Margaret learned of Jim Crow laws. By the end of high school, Margaret found that the church represented a disconnect between belief and behavior. As a young woman, she considered what happened in the church, and I quote, words without action, hollow and impotent. A loving family was Margaret's safe harbor. She recalled a warm Christmas Eve at home with her parents and siblings. She and her sisters processed solemnly as their mother played Christmas carols on the family's upright piano. Margaret described feelings of family, love, sharing, and togetherness. Margaret believes that a good life comes from within and cannot be measured. The essentials are goodness, integrity, honesty, religiosity, strong family bonds, and a commitment to equity and justice. Finding a soulmate was also important to her. Margaret was married to Dr. Roy D. Morrison, who met Wyant Wathen Dunn on Star Island in the early 1980s. Dr. Morrison accepted Mr. Wathen Dunn's invitation to speak at Paint Branch. Eventually, their friendship led to Dr. Morrison's church membership. Margaret's membership came years later. I asked Margaret whether there were times in her life that she felt content. She replied that she was and is content almost every day of every week because she was surrounded by people who respected her. When I asked what advice she would give a young person, she told me that getting into good trouble was important because silence does not lead to progress. To consider not what you want it to be, but what kind of person you want to become. During our conversation, Margaret recited 3 poems from memory. Here's one that spoke to me of courage and resilience. This is Risk by Anais Nin. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to bloom. Betty Young was born in Louisville, Kentucky, 81 years ago. Her early life was challenging. She and her family moved often to pursue her father's dreams. He died when Betty was 15. Moving around the country taught Betty how to cope in new situations. Reading was, in her words, my salvation. When the family moved to a new place, she found the local library. Libraries were her favorite places, so much so that she has joked with her children that she wants them to scatter her ashes inside one. At a large high school in Detroit, Betty discovered the school newspaper, where she made friends with fellow students. She became the editor and won a scholarship to college, where she earned a degree in English literature with a specialty in Renaissance poetry. She laughed that her major wasn't very practical, but it did lead her to a job at a publishing company in Boston. Betty told me that as a young adult, the good life meant to her meaningful friendships, stability, and a normal, happy family life. She and her husband and daughter moved to Maryland, where her son was born. Unfortunately, her marriage ended in divorce. She and her children formed a close family bond that continues to this day. Her son and daughter live nearby. Betty describes fondly a recent trip she and her children took to the Eastern Shore. At first, it was meant to be a girls' spa weekend. But when Betty's son learned of it, he asked to come along. She describes those 3 days as charmed and said the love they shared was palpable. She is so grateful. Betty describes having children as the best thing she did in her life. Now she describes herself as a besotted grandmother. She has formed tight bonds with her grandchildren, 15-year-old twins. They have inherited her love of reading, and she looks forward to their birthday shopping trips. Betty called her husband, Paul Young, who was an active member at Paint Branch, the great love of her life. They traveled often together. He was smart and good company. She misses him. But she doesn't mind living alone. During the pandemic, Betty has discovered her inner introvert. Reading is critical. Often, she reads 3 books at a time. She is not fond of growing older. She describes medical challenges that have ended her frequent walks. Walking gave her exercise and joy. Still, she seems content. Her life is filled with books and classical music that she plays in her home and her car all day, every day. And of course, her life is filled with family. I asked Betty whether she thought she lived a good life, and she said, sure. She was a loved child. She was loved by her parents, and as the only granddaughter, she was loved by her grandparents as well. She did leave her childhood wanting to do things differently from her upbringing, and she did. I asked Betty what she would say to a young person about living a good life. She would tell them, find the things you do well, go along a path that will allow you to support yourself, with meaningful work. The frills of life are not a necessity. Betty's life illustrates even more, overcoming adversity and loss, choosing her own path, and doing things differently. Betty, Carol, Don, and Margaret have lived very different lives, but they think similarly about what makes a good life. Not one of them talked of seeking wealth, status, power, or material possessions. All of them talked about the importance of relationships. All of them experienced and overcame loss. All of them rebounded from adversity. They took risks. They are content with their lives. I had a final request from each of these wonderful people. I asked them to share with me a poem, song, or reading that gave them joy. Here's what they shared. Don Gerson said that there were so many things that gave him joy that he couldn't choose just one. So to honor Don, I chose a poem, The Arctic Wind by D.M. Brands.
Have you ever seen the northern lights dance in a moonlit sky? Or heard the distant cries of wolves in the mountains way up high? Have you ever walked the icy plains where the rain slings and burns? Or felt the cold pierce through your bones like 1,000 knifing turns? There's something in the Arctic wind that holds me like a spell, and it beckons me to live like men, the men only legends tell. Far away, the gray echoes its weathering call to brave and bold the winter cold, once and for all.
During our conversation, Margaret Morrison recited from memory the poem The Windhover by Gerard Manley Hopkins. Margaret's rendition was flawless. I knew I couldn't do the poem justice, so I found this version.
The Windhover by Gerard Manley Hopkins. To Christ our Lord, I caught this morning morning's minion, kingdom of daylight's dauphin, dapple dawn-drawn falcon in his riding, of the rolling level underneath him, steady air, and striding high there, how he rung upon the rein of a wimpling wing, and his ecstasy, then off, forth on swing as a skate's heel sweeps smooth on a bow bend. The hurl and gliding rebuffed the big wind. My heart in hiding stirred for a bird, the achieve of, the mastery of the thing, brute's beauty and valor and act, oh, air, pride, plume, here buckled, and the fire that breaks from thee then, 1,000,000,000 times told lovelier, more dangerous, oh my chevalier. No wonder of it, sheer plod makes plow down Cillian shine, and blue bleak embers, ah, my dear, fall, gall themselves, and gash gold vermilion.
Betty Young's selection was the first stanza of a poem by E. Cummings that she recited to herself when she left her house for a walk. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees, and the blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is infinite, which is yes. Carol Carter Walker told me that she listens to this song several times a week, and it brings her joy every time. When I asked myself whether I lived a good life, my mind went directly to the negatives, the obstacles that kept me from performing at my best, the high achievement that eluded me, the money I didn't make, the friends and relatives I let slip away, the opportunities I missed, the unfortunate choices I made, the risks I didn't take. But after a conversation with a friend, I took a closer look at my life. What I found led me to the discovery that I had lived a good life, and my good life continues. I have married a great love. and in an incredible act of compassion, she married me back. Yes, there were obstacles, but there always are, and often they are difficult to overcome. I did my best and sometimes fell short. I might not have reached the heights of my 3 careers, but I'm confident that in each, I made a difference in the lives of the people I encountered. The exact nature and shape of the impact, I may never know. Now, about Wednesday. In my experience, the most thought-provoking sermons last beyond Sunday morning. So it is my humble and fervent hope that on Wednesday, you will ask yourself, am I living a good life? If your answer is yes, then celebrate in whatever way you choose. If your answer is no, don't make my mistake. Be gentle with yourself. If you must look at the past, identify the positive aspects of your life that you might have overlooked. If ruminating about the past doesn't lead to contentment, focus on the present. After all, the present is all we really have. Choose another path, perhaps the road not taken. Remember, our first principle applies to you too. You have inherent dignity and worth without question. Take your spirit with you and don't forget to celebrate along the way. And remember, the storm is passing over. Ashe. Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though with pain I made my way, still with hope I meet each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life. Let us join together, even while we are apart, in singing hymn number 6, just as long as I have breath.
Thank you, David. Ashe, yes. I feel just so, I don't even have words for it. It's just so wonderful to hear about the lives and the views and the wisdom of some of our Paint Branch elders that we have heard about today, that have lit the chalice today. And that takes us into our offering and the mission of our church. So the mission of our church carries on in these uncertain times, and it's just more important than ever. We're so grateful to have the financial support of all of you and our friends. So please give as generously as you're able. And you'll find the information for giving will be posted in the chat window. Offertory music will be That's Life by Dean Kay and Kelly Gordon.
Thank you, David. As we end our worship together this morning, I offer these words found in our hymnal, reading number 686. They were written by Mark L. Bellantini, a minister at the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus, Ohio. Go in peace, gently, at home in yourselves. Act justly, speak justly. Remember the depth of your own compassion. Forget not your power in the days of your powerlessness. Do not desire to be wealthier than your peers, and stint not your hand of charity. Practice forbearance. Speak the truth or speak not. Take care of yourselves as bodies, or you are a good gift. Crave peace for all the people in the world, beginning with yourselves, and go as you go with the dream of that peace alive in your heart. May it be so. Now let us sing together, Fuente de Amor, Spirit of Life.
Thank you, David. And now I will invite one of our Paint Branch elders, Marge Owens, to extinguish our chalice. Marge Owens, who's been a member for decades since we were a one-room congregation at the University of Maryland College Park. So we're very happy to have her light our chalice today, and she is extinguishing it. Marge, can you unmute?
Let's see if we can.
Oh, yes.
All right. So it was a wonderful get together. I'm glad I did it. See you all soon. Take care of yourselves.